folks, welcome back to the channel, your home for all content Lord of the Rings home. Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 3, and specifically I want to talk about some teams I think they're going to do pretty well, and also some characters that I think are going to be able to basically get them up, plug and play them, slot them into different teams, and I think they're going to do very, very well. So before we get into that, I want to just go over the scoring very quickly. 400 points per living ally at the start of every ally's turn. This means that if you have fast characters, that you're going to be getting a lot of points early on for sure, because they're going to keep going, right? It also means that, yeah, of course you want your characters to survive. 600 points whenever an ally blocks an attack. That's great, especially for characters that have block chance already. You don't have native block chance like you do crit chance. Has to be part of the passive, or you have to get it from, somebody else's skills or whatever. Defensive obviously gives you 100% block chance. Gain 600 points whenever an ally evades an attack. Obviously, Nimble is going to be OP. Gain 10 points for each health percentage healed on an ally. This is going to be really great for teams that obviously have a lot of passive healing as well. So I think regens are actually going to be pretty good here. It's just going to be kind of that extra frosting on top. What I really like about this raid setup is that it's not just like a clone copy of, it's just the chapter 1 scoring with how many orcs you kill. Instead, it is about survivability. And that means that, there's actually a lot of interesting sort of team comps you can get. Okay, so I was wrong when I was thinking about what they could do for chapter 3. So they basically just took out the bomber. You still have 6 with the war guard in there. There isn't like a specific orc that's going to apply marked. They're kind of all going to be applying marked, right? So they get a new passive. What's interesting to me about this passive, right, is it replaces the one from chapter 1. The chapter 1 passive has ramping resistance and damage that they get whenever they have more of that passive, right? That's why chapter 1 becomes harder and harder, because the orcs are hitting pretty hard. On spawn, gain 1 stack of Unbreakable. I think that's actually pretty important. Multi-hit attacks are going to really chew through these. Whenever this character attacks the target enemy, on their turn inflict marked for 3 turns. So the marked lasts for 3 turns. Call a random ally to assist. That is a key part right here. If the enemy already has marked, inflict 1 stack of captured. And then on the end of the turn, gain 1% turn meter for each enemy, and each stack of captured on all enemies. On death, summon 1 random Moria orc. Okay, so the way you get rid of captured is you can either cleanse it. So cleanser is obviously going to be very important for this chapter. Or you can just kill a bunch of orcs on your character that has all the captured, and you can cleanse it off that way. When an ally gains taunt or provoke, cleanse marked on all allies. This is really good. Obviously, we know stealth is going to clear marked off of themselves as well. This cleanse on the capture, though, I believe is just so, like, let's say you have Eladin. I think Eladin has to kill off the orcs for him to cleanse captured off of himself. I don't think it works if you say have Elrahir kill an orc, and I don't think that's going to cleanse capture. I think it's the person who has capture has to do the killing. That's my interpretation of it anyway. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention, though, is that I am surprised that there isn't ramping damage and resistance on this passive as well. I guess we'll see how it goes. It might be enough just that you kind of always have an assist. If the enemy was already marked, inflict 1 stack of capture. This is always happening whenever an orc attacks, and maybe that's just enough to really kind of whittle you down. Obviously, war guards are going to be more annoying than ever here, because they're going to gain stacks of provoke. There isn't exactly an objective, except for surviving, so maybe it's okay. But I actually think one of the big ones is going to be the Shadow Seer. The Shadow Seer is able to clear Banes off of their allies when they do basic. I imagine that's going to be the same when they get called to assist. So it could be the case that they're really able to quickly kind of cleanse themselves as a team. Okay, so with that in mind, we actually got a bunch of, let me zoom in here. We got a bunch of clarifications on certain mechanics questions that I wanted to relay to you as well. And big shout out to CG Heem for this communication so early on. We very much appreciate that. It allows us to plan for what we want to do for Chapter 3, which is coming next week, which is honestly great. Middle of September, not even the end of September. I thought it was definitely going to be the end of September. Okay, so for healing, for getting points for healing, you can't overheal and still get points. They have to actually go from some lower HP to some higher HP. It's It's that percentage that you go up that's going to be getting you points. Summoned units, this is the big one, will count as allies, therefore keeping them alive nets you 400 points per alive ally. So you actually can go from having, 2,000 points when your characters start their turn to 2,400 points when their characters start their turn, which is massive. So allies really big, plus you can heal them, plus obviously they're going to be able to output damage. We'll talk about it. Nuraz is looking pretty good. Any method of healing counts, which is good to know. As long as you're not at full health. And then assisting, yes, the assisting orc will apply a stack of capture if the target is marked. So this is a question I asked. This is, I think, a big deal that might be overlooked at the moment. So basically the way I'm interpreting this is, let's go back. It's the first turn an orc is going. They attack your character. The first one is going to inflict marked for 3 turns. And then the next one that assists is automatically going to put a stack of captured on you. Okay, now let's say your character already has marked. Let's say you've got a tank and he's kind of soaking up all the damage. First one's going to inflict captured, and the ally that assists the orc is also going to inflict captured. So that's going to be 2 captures right off the bat, which means that it's going to be pretty quick to get to 10 captureds if you're not careful, right? Basically, there's going to be 6 enemy orcs, and I think, let's see, you get 1 on the first turn, and then you get 2 for every other turn. You're going to be, if all of the orcs go and hit just your one character, and they don't block or cleanse anything, then that character's dead, right? Because once they get to 10 stacks, they receive a fatal blow. So that's something to keep in mind. I think that's going to be basically the limiting factor here. Capture mark can be cleansed, obviously. And importantly, revives can also resurrect a character that have been dealt a fatal blow. So the main mechanic for Rivendell, Elrond does not get a nerf for Chapter 3. So let's talk about some characters I think are going to be good. Let's start with the main ones. Obviously, Rivendell has been an extraordinary raid team, right? They do well in pretty much every chapter. I think that's going to be the case in Chapter 3 as well. But people are curious about maybe slotting in somebody for Lothian, right? And you have kind of 2 options. You've, I think, Naramiri and Leliel. So let's start with Naramiri, because I love Naramiri. I think she's a great character. Obviously got the heal. Obviously have a cleanse. Can stealth herself. Has nimble, right? These are all things that are going to net you points, keep your team alive longer. I specifically like her cleanse, because if you've got Eladin on the team, right, then you can cleanse 2 Banes. That's 2 stacks of capture, and possibly a stack of marked. That's going to be massive. Obviously, granting protection is also good, but I think that's going to be a big deal. Just having that additional healing. Well, maybe not the healing so much as the cleanse. People are really excited about Leliel, though. Let me explain why. First of all, she has turn meter manipulation on her basic, which is great. Gains 2 stacks of defensive. Awesome, because defensive is kind of what you want for the Chapter 3, right? It's a guaranteed block. She has a heal for herself, which is going to obviously net you points. You get a nimble, going to net you points. Grant stealth for 2 turns to all elf allies. I think it would be really, really awesome if it was just grant stealth for 2 turns to all allies. Then I think she would be an incredible plug-and-play character. Obviously, that's not the case, so you have to put her with elves. So basically, you're going to be able to clear all of the marked off of your team and then focus everything onto her stealth while she heals, and she's got 1 stack of nimble as well. Okay, so given plus 25, or gain plus 25% block chance and plus 20% damage, 10% damage rather. So that's also going to be massively important, just because she has the opportunity to block, whereas a lot of other characters don't. I'm pretty split about Leliel, to be honest with you, and the reason for that is because I don't know how it's going to work with Eladin, right? If you stealth all the elf allies, Eladin is going to lose all of his provokes. And I think that's a big way that he kind of keeps regenerating his special too, is having those stacks of provokes. That might not be the case when he is solely the target. So it might work. I think that this is probably going to be a pretty good option. The more I think about it, the more I'm thinking Leliel's actually going to be a pretty good option and not F tier for this particular chapter 3 of the raid. Because if you can switch the kind of focus of attack to one other character and then switch it back, and you can kind of keep passing it back and forth. The issue is that you're going to have to rely on Arwen's cleansing ability. And while that does come up decently often, especially if you use her special one to kind of give yourself another turn very quickly, it doesn't do much, right? It's just one. It's good because it's across the whole team, but it's just one. It's not a focused cleanse. So then what you have to do is make sure Leliel is killing orcs. And I just don't think she's going to do that as well as Elladan, because of Elladan's special 2 he's got good damage too, and his special 2 is pretty good. So I'm just not sure. I'm pretty torn. The other thing is that you're probably going to need to get Leliel up pretty high in terms of resources. You want that second defensive stack, so that's a level 6 on her special 1. You want at least level 5 on her special 2 because you reduce the stamina cost. And then you probably want to max passive just so you can get that extra block chance if you really are trying to push her into an already pretty maxed Rivendell squad, right? So that's a big resource sink. So I'm personally not going to do that because I don't have like any resources dumped into Leliel. I know people are pretty excited about this, and I'm really curious to see how it goes. But one of the characters I want to talk about the most is Nuraz, because he is very plug and play friendly. And I think he's going to do absolute numbers in Chapter 3. So his special 1 is incredible. 3-turn cooldown, right? Okay, I guess you have to get to level 4 first. But grant 1 stack of defensive to all squad members, cleanse 1 bane from self and 2 random allies. So the defensive plus cleanse combo is nuts for Chapter 3. But here's where it gets even better, right? Summon a troll stonebreaker, grant them 40% turn meter, 1 stack of provoke, gain 1 stack of regeneration for 2 turns. That's crazy. So you're going to get a bunch of extra bonuses for having an ally, right? Another ally. You're going to be giving them provoke. It's okay if the troll stonebreaker dies because, I mean, you may not be surviving that long. 10 turns is a long time, but it's just taking extra heat off of your team. And that means more turns that they can go, and that makes it easier for you to rack up points, right? So I'm a big fan of this ability and this ability, to be honest, too. This is massive. Nuraz might be somebody I just take up specifically for Chapter 2, and I might throw him in with like a Rohan team. And then on turn, grant 2 stacks of provoke to 1 troll ally, prioritizing the troll stonebreaker, gain plus 10% max health. That's big. So obviously you want to run him with a large character no matter what, and then just keep kind of healing up and doing that sort of thing. The issue here is that yes, Nuraz is considered a healer, but he doesn't actually have any healing. I guess 1 stack of regeneration for the Troll Stonebreaker. It's not really, right? So there's not a lot of healing here. If he had some passive regeneration that he's passing out, that would be really awesome, but he doesn't. Still, I think he might be the GOAT of Chapter 3, if I'm being honest. Let's talk about some teams I think are going to do very well besides Rivendell. I think the dwarves are actually going to do pretty well, and this is not just copium because I've invested into dwarves. The combination of Biffer's leadership and his passive are going to just do well. When all squad members get hit by the same attack, grant 1 stack of defensive to those squad members. There you go. Instant block for the next turn, right? He grants defensive on the ally with the most health and gives them provoke, right? And it cleanses. This is big. Not to mention, everybody gets defensive, right? But when a squad member gains defensive, basically when they're a dwarf, they gain might, and then they have a 50% chance to gain counterattack. Plus, you get a little bit of resistance here as well. This is big. So essentially, let's say a Skull Crusher does one of their AoEs. Everybody's getting defensive. Everybody's getting might, and a good chunk of them, half of them, are going to get counterattack, which is going to be pretty big for just being able to kind of do a lot of damage and make sure that you are in a position to clear captures off of people who have them, right? So I think this is going to go pretty well for dwarves. One other reason I'm saying that is specifically because of Feely. His basic does a heal, right? That's big. He's got a special 2 that does a heal. It also grants fortitude. This is big. And then he also hands out, it's not a lot, but it's 6% block chance to his team. So anybody who doesn't have block chance already gets a little bit of block chance, and that's, it's not over the top, but I think it's going to help you eke out a few more points, right? Let's talk about another team I think a lot of people have or are looking at that might do okay. And then we'll get into the two common teams, the Rohan team and the Isengard team. Let's talk about Haradram. I think Haradram will be okay. They don't really have like a lot of defensive capabilities, but they do pass. I mean, T-Bed passes out Fortitude with her basic, but that's not going to do you a whole lot. What I do like is that the Haradram have 2 cleansers on their team, right? Special 2 here for T-Beb, and this grants haste, which is really awesome. There's a little bit of healing as well. Bekaloo also cleanses 2 Banes, grant concentration. This is going to be pretty big, I think. I think they can keep the capture and mark off of each other pretty well, and they're sort of going to be passing around who is taking the hits between Wubate, between Roble, between just kind of everybody. Roble has 1 stack of defensive, but that's not going to... I don't think that's going to do anything. I do think the turn meter manipulation is going to be pretty good, though, especially if you can get that train rolling. Then you can get your Haradram team to keep going as fast as they can. That's going to rack up points. I think they're going to be doing okay. Let's talk about Road to Rivendell. I also think they're going to do okay in Chapter 3, but it's going to require them to have resources, which is the case for all of this sort of stuff, right? The reason I think that is because they're so fast, right? They have stealth, obviously. They've got a cleanse on with Pippin. I think that's going to be pretty good. Obviously, healing with Pippin. I'm just a little bit worried that Strider's going to end up getting deleted. He's got a good amount of armor, but it might not matter if he just gets 10 stacks of capture on him right away. You're going to have to really, really be mindful of switching between stealth and Sam taunting. Sam's got his nimbles, obviously, and putting up his provokes, which is good, but I'm just a little bit worried about that. And their survivability in general, they're not really known for their survivability, which is why you have to be so high in power to do well in arena with Rivendell, right? But I think Chapter 3s, they're still going to be pretty decent. Road to Rivendell has been a pretty good raid team overall, despite what people thought when I was making a joke on my tier list. Okay, let's talk about Isengard. Isengard, I think, are also going to do okay. Not as good as they do in Chapter 2, but I think they're still going to do okay. I'm specifically thinking about, again, just running a full Isengard team there. You have extra block chance. Let's go to Ugluk. Right, that's just the healing. Getting Provoke is going to basically clear Marked off of everybody, which is really good. His basic is once again going to be very good. But yes, he gets 25% block chance, and he's, of course, inflicting weak-minded when that happens. I think that's going to be pretty big. He gains 1 stack of defensive as well. So there's some stuff in Ugluk's kit that makes him pretty viable. Again, it's probably about keeping him alive so that he can kind of make sure that things are cleansed off of himself. Dunhar obviously passes out defensive on his passive whenever it's his turn. That's pretty big. The nice thing, the difference between Chapter 1 Isengard and Chapter 3 Isengard is that you aren't going to be you're not going to be putting all of your attacks into Bomber where you can't apply Banes, right? Here you're going to be able to apply Banes as much as you want, just like in Chapter 2. So you're going to be able to keep that sustain going with his leadership ability. I think that's going to be pretty important. I think they're going to do okay. I don't think they're going to do as good as they do in Chapter 2, but I think they're still going to be doing okay. The last team I want to talk about, I know this always ends up being a long video because I like talking about this stuff, but let's talk about Rohan. Rohan 3, I think, are going to be interesting. I think Eomer is once again going to be the hero here. Yes, I understand that Eowyn gives herself defensive and counterattack, but it's just her. I think that's going to be okay. And you're not going to want to be focusing all of your attacks into Eowyn because she's kind of squishy. But that'll be some nice extra points. But of course, Eomer has his summon. That's going to just give you lots of extra points, I think. His summon is pretty good. It hits like a truck. And then also a little bit of healing here from Eomer on his passive for him and Eowyn, which I think will go a decent amount of the way. Ethane doesn't really provide a whole lot, except that you can clear Marked off of everybody with his special 1. I guess his counterattack is pretty good too, but nothing, specific to the Chapter 3 that's going to make him really, really good. So what I'm actually thinking is, who am I going to run with Rohan 3? And kind of the way I'm looking at it now is I might just do a full Isengard squad, so no Ironhide in there, and then run Ironhide with my Rohan 3, and then also run Nuraz. And then I can just always have a summon up. I think that's kind of an interesting little treat there. Nuraz is going to be able to apply Provoke on either Ironhide or the Troll Stonebreaker. We'll also have Provoke on Eothane if I need it. Nuraz has the Cleanse. So I'm actually thinking Nuraz might slot into my Rohan team. That's what I'm thinking about. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about Chapter 3. I'm very excited. This is it's a change of pace. It allows a lot of theory crafting. I'm just curious what you all are gonna, be running for Chapter 3 or what you're thinking about. And before I go, obviously, we're making a big push to 1,000 subscribers. So if you've not hit the subscribe button, please feel free to do so if you found this engaging or educational at all. I guess mostly engaging. But with that, take it easy.